As I look around the room tonight, actually the lawn, I can't help but feel honored to speak as we all gather here to celebrate the life of our dear friend, co-worker, mother, sister, and wife, Lynn Smith. First, I feel as though that I must warn you that as an English teacher, I always think in terms of the form of an essay, and of course, every good essay has a good title. For Lynn's essay, the title would have to be Who Does That? However, before I explain why, I feel I should tell you how Lynn and I first met. 16 years ago, my son, Jack, was attending a local daycare with several other little girls. Well, that was not an issue for him. He was delighted when one day a little boy named Andrew arrived. From that day on to this, Jack and Andrew have been the best of friends. And I'm speaking for Jack when I say how very sorry he is that he can't be here today for Andrew and Linda. Jack is away at basic training in Missouri, and I can assure you that it is only the National Guard that could keep him away today. A few days after Jack and Andrew met, there was a party for all the daycare families. Jack's dad, Steve, joined us a little late, and I introduced him to Linda as Andrew's mom. A little while later, I introduced him to Lynn, also as Andrew's mom. I could see his puzzled expression, and a bit later, he not so quietly asked, "Are there two Andrews?" Didn't I just meet two moms? Now, about that, I have two things to say. One, Steve, well, he was from Hadley, so this was just a foreign concept to him. And two, from that day on, he adored Lynn, Linda, and Andrew, and considered Andrew to be a second son. And it was only fitting when Steve passed away that Lynn spoke at his service. What I picture now is the two of them cheering on a favorite sports team, with Steve eating one of Lynn's famous pies, loaded with ice cream. After all, who else but Steve would outbid everyone at the Pelham Pie auction to the tune of $100 for the chance to eat one of them? Steve knew a good pie when he met one, and Lynn's were the best. So, as to the title of her essay, Who Does That? Lynn is that friend who did things none of us would ever do. For example, at the age of 18 and upon graduating from high school, she and her best friend biked across the country on their 10-speed bikes, taking only 2 months' time. Who does that? I know for me, I would still be out there barely making my way over the Rockies. And then her cars. Lynn loved her cars, and the older and the crankier, the better. Every week, she would diligently change out the one parked at our house to exercise the one that had been sitting, because, of course, who but Lynn would own 5 cars but have a 2-car driveway? In any case, one had a 10-year-old battery, one had AC but no heat, the other heat but no AC. And then when it was time, she changed the oil herself, not because she couldn't afford to pay someone, but because she liked to. Who does that? I don't even know how to check the oil in my new car, let alone change it. Lynn always described her cars as new to me when I would ask her about the latest one. Well, I will say the most recent Audi, very new to her, was something she took great joy in owning. I could tell she felt like royalty as it purred out the driveway, even when the destination was the hospital and more tough treatments lay ahead. And then the baking. Every Christmas, Lynn's kitchen became a production line for every type of cookie known, all perfect, all delicious, all beautiful, and she never seemed stressed or harried by it. Lynn also biked everywhere in the Pioneer Valley. She would deliberately park far away from work and then bike there and back, no matter the weather, smiling the entire time. Who does that, I would think, as I hurriedly passed her, late for work or school pickup or some appointment. Finally, her latest, but probably greatest, was fighting this most terrible of cancer for over 2 years. The odds were not in her favor, but Lynn was determined to try everything to carry on and see so many milestones in Andrew's life, including senior prom, high school graduation, and his first year of college. Linda retiring from her all-consuming career at Leisure Services, multiple trips from Maine to California with family and friends, all the while enduring every possible treatment and procedure to beat this thing. Who does that? Well, I'll tell you who does that. Only one of the most stubborn people I have ever known in my life. One of the things I loved about Lynn was her sense of self, and she knew she was stubborn. She told me once about a story when she was 5 and in kindergarten. Apparently, her room was a mess and she wouldn't clean it. Her mother, in her very sensible way, said, "Well, you have to stay in your room and can't go to school until it is clean." As the story goes, Lynn missed a week of kindergarten, and her mother dutifully sent a note to her teacher asking her to please excuse Lynn's absence because she had to stay home and clean her room. Lynn was that no-fuss friend we all appreciate, always there, solidly supporting latest endeavor, whatever it was, no fuss, no complaining, just figure it out and get it done and enjoy every minute. Never wanting the spotlight, just there, no questions asked. I remember that at a very hard time in Steve's life, I had to have a chaperone for the kids' visits with him. I never even thought twice about it. Of course, it was Lynn I reached out to. And she was there, no questions asked, and made everyone feel as comfortable as possible. After I learned that Lynn was gone, I found myself in an absolutely foul mood, and it grew worse as the day went on. I couldn't pinpoint the source, but by the time I got home, I was spitting mad. So mad that I cursed at the dogs for greeting me too enthusiastically and stormed off down to the pool to clean it, muttering and sputtering the whole way about this stupid pool and cleaning it and sounding pretty awful. As I vacuumed the pool, I finally realized that I was mad at Lynn for being gone and mad that I had tricked myself into believing that she was going to beat this unbeatable demon. I was mad that I didn't get to say goodbye, and I was mad that I would never see her again. At that moment, I looked up and saw Andrew driving into our driveway to switch cars, dutifully taking on Lynn's jobs. As Andrew got out of the car and waved and walked over, I felt my anger dissipate, and as I realized that Lynn was still here because Andrew was here, and in him are all her best qualities: her warmth, her strength, her blonde hair, her blue eyes, her stoicism, her athleticism, her eternal stubbornness, her sense of right and wrong, her keen intelligence, her sense of humor, and her love for her friends, her family, and Linda. I knew then that while I'm going to miss Lynn, she is still here, and that all I have to do is connect with Andrew to find her. As much as we feel her absence, we will always feel her presence. For me, it will be every time I see Andrew, see Linda, see an Audi, see a lone cyclist, or see a piece of potential firewood at the side of the road, which she loved to collect after a storm. Although I can't promise to ride my bike very often, as even the most padded of seats doesn't help assuage my discomfort, or that I will ever own an Audi, I do know that I will always have the good fortune to get one of those warm hugs from Andrew when the friends group, as they call themselves, are home from their various adventures. And I think I will stop and pick up that piece of wood at the side of the road now and then. Lynn always tagged her Pelham PTO agenda with the saying, "Many hands make light work." This work of letting Lynn go will never be light, but with the many hands around us, I know we will do our best to enjoy every moment of every day, because that's what Lynn always did. Thank you.
I started writing this speech in March of 2017 in my dorm room, 2 months before Lynn passed away, because I knew my mother wouldn't want to be remembered by her last days. My mother's legacy isn't defined by the arduous last 2 years of her life, but instead by the lives she's transformed over 58 years. Amongst ourselves, I see friends from Lynn's childhood, from her high school years, from her time at UC Santa Barbara, UC Berkeley, and UMass Amherst. I see faces from Pelham Elementary, Amherst High School, McKesson, softball teams, bikers, Mass General staff, dog lovers. Lynn cherished each and every one of you. You made her happy. Linda and I are both honored that you're here. As painful as it is, let me take you back 3 months. After a call from Linda on April 18th, I could barely understand what Lynn was trying to tell me through the different fog of her medicines. I knew the end was near. At that point, my parents had been in the hospital for 11 days. It wasn't for another 3 weeks that Linda and I would return home. The most difficult days of my life were all spent on Ellison 16. I can't begin to fathom the pain of an entire month. Even at the end, my mother was witty. She was brave, she was strong, and she was kind. I remember the cracking pain when I heard Lynn whisper to me she wanted to die, to end her pain, to end our pain, to end all of our suffering. There was truly nothing Lynn wouldn't sacrifice for her loved ones. In a brief period of lucidness amongst her last days, Lynn told me not to cry. I told her she fought hard, and she fought long, and it was okay to rest. Ever since that day, to some extent, I felt hollow. The sun shines a little dimmer, the world isn't so bright, the silence at 454 Gulf Road is deafening, and wherever I go, whatever I do, I can't escape the words that seem to flood my consciousness. My mother is dead. The average lifespan in the United States is 79 years, and the fact that the most extraordinarily above-average person I've ever met was taken away from me, from her wife, from her friends, from her family far too soon, leaves me outraged and saddened. Whenever a doctor or a nurse would remind us of the fact that only a small percent of pancreatic cancer patients survive past 1 year, Lynn would happily recount to us she'd been in the top 1% her whole life. It wasn't time to stop now. Lynn Smith was truly above average in every sense of the phrase, in athletics and problem-solving skills and communication. In everything, Lynn excelled. Going back 3 months, when I told Lynn this all felt like a bad dream, she weakly said maybe it is. But after waking up morning after morning without her in my life, I know that this excruciating pain and the loneliness is real. The moment I saw the life leave her eyes, I felt something inside me break. In a way you can't articulate, I felt numb. To all of you listening who can, hug a loved one and tell them you love them, because there's nothing I wouldn't sacrifice to have that chance again. I'd like to conclude with an excerpt of a letter Lynn left me when I moved into my freshman dorm. Dearest Andrew, as you move on to the next phase of your life, I wanted to take the opportunity to tell you how proud I am of you. We will always be your safety net, so don't be afraid to stretch yourself. I feel you are destined for great things. Go out there and tackle them. I hope you know this with every fiber of your being, as I have tried to tell you each and every day. I love you.
Those who didn't get a chance to meet me, I'm Nancy, I'm Lynn's sister, and I'm going to do the best I can to get through this without making a mess of my face. As I look back, growing up in a large family is a pretty cool thing. With 8 of us kids, it seemed there was always someone around. As kids, our place was outside playing. Inside was for rainy days only. I remember sitting on the back patio playing Barbie dolls with Lynn and any variety of neighborhood girls. Back then, we had a couple of Barbie dolls and not very many Barbie clothes, but we spent hours in the shade under the silk tree playing with the dolls anyway. I remember Lynn and I deciding that the dolls must be hungry. So we grabbed what we had on hand in the kitchen. There was always Ritz crackers at our house. So we grabbed those. Along with summertime, there was also always green grapes. Lynn and I developed a love for Ritz crackers with munched up green grapes because that was what was at hand. After all, we had a kid's palate and there was never cheese around in our house. We also liked to play jacks, which was certainly a thing of the times gone by. Jump rope was a favorite for Lynn, who always seemed to be able to outdo all the rest of the girls with jump rope. But much more impressive, she was able to come up with different configurations, her favorite being double Dutch. And in all the times that she would jump, I don't remember ever seeing her feet get tangled up in the ropes, unlike my feet. We also liked to have parades. We lived in a cul-de-sac and we had lots of other kids in the cul-de-sac with us. It made it easy to gather lots of kids and to join in a parade. But everybody back then knew that you needed to decorate your bike in order to ride it in a parade.
And we didn't have the things like crepe paper that somebody might have to decorate the bike. But we certainly had decks of cards, many of them missing a few cards. We never really had very many whole decks of cards. So Lynn figured out that you could use a deck of cards and tuck the cards into the spokes of the bicycle. And hence we did that, and we thought we were pretty special to be able to ride that. No surprise to look back that even back then, at a very young age, she had an affinity for bicycles. As a young kid, for the most part, we played together along with all the rest of the neighbors' kids. One day, my friend Joni and I were playing. And one of the things about Joni, poor girl, I don't know what the problem was. Everywhere Joni went, trouble came. And we were wanting to play, and we really were not too pleased with that darn little sister who was in the way. And we didn't want her playing with us. Joni and I really just wanted to play alone. Joni and I decided the best way to do that, we were inside, Lynn was outside, was of course to lock the doors to the house, which we did. Lynn did not like that. Lynn never liked being excluded from anything. And so she took the problem into her own hands, literally, by putting her fist through the window right next to the front door. I got in a lot of trouble about that. So my dad fixed the window, he put in a new pane, and he reglazed the window. He also had 8 kids, each of them with 10 fingers. And the glaze was kind of like loose putty, which had all manner of fingerprints and other sorts of things in the glaze. Gordon and Mary, who are up here in the front with me, my brother Gordon, his wife Mary, are still in that house. And I don't think Mary particularly appreciates the artwork of us children in the glazing on the window right by the front door. Another unique thing about having all those kids around us, growing up, Mom frequently would call for one of us kids. And she oftentimes got a little bit confused about which kid it was she was hollering for. So Lynn and I grew up knowing that when she hollered for Lancy, we best come. We weren't sure if she wanted Lynn or whether she wanted Nancy, but we weren't really willing to find out. And so I think my mom knew way back then that Lynn and I and our lives were destined to be melded together. Lynn grew up with a love of swimming and of water. We grew up in a very big house. Well, at least at the time it seemed to us to be a big house in a very big yard. And we continually campaigned with my parents to put a swimming pool in the backyard. After all, the neighbors' houses, several of them, had a swimming pool. Not that we spent much time swimming there, but they were there. Dad always said that the very best swimming pool to be had was the swimming pool in the neighbor's yard. Hence, we don't have a pool in the backyard where Gordon and Mary live to this day. However, not very far away at a junior high school called Covington, there was a pool, and we could ride our bikes there, and sometimes we walked there, but we were there every single afternoon all summer long. We got a little patch that was when I first started going and Lynn was a little younger and we wouldn't take her, it was 25 cents a day to get in, and as she got to be older, it was a patch that you sewed on your bathing suit that lasted for the whole summer. And so we would take ourselves there every single day during the summer. By the time Lynn was old enough to go to Covington with me, oh, I said that already, sorry. On the pool deck, there was a vending machine that contained ice cream sandwiches. We bought one of those every day also, all summer long. It was something special and a treat for us. Any man wonder that in the freezer at Lynn's house now, what is there, Linda? Ice cream sandwiches. Lynn had a deep love for ice cream, even young. On our trek home, we would often stop at Rancho Shopping Center, and they had a restaurant, and we would go in and we would get a milkshake. And again, find a way to have that ice cream that Lynn loved so much. We also lived by a wee bit away from a creek. What a fun place for kids, a creek. All kinds of things that you could do. We had to cross sort of a busy street to get there, but that never stopped us. At the creek, we could swim, we could swing from rope swings, we could jump in the water. We made all manner of forts in the creeks and all the brush that was there, and we hiked up and down the creek beds. Lynn and I walked every inch of that creek from Fremont Road to Portland Road. And we also used it as a cut through to go visit friends on the other side of the creek in what we fondly called way over there in the county instead of in the city. But what I remember most of all, the creative fun that Lynn and I had playing in that forbidden creek for hours and hours on end. And I certainly paid for that love of playing in the creek with many, many bouts of poison oak. And it always amazed me that Lynn never got poison oak. She seemed to have been immune to that. She and I learned to tie knots so that we could make rope swings. And at one point, we even tried to make a hammock sort of a device, as we thought if we could just relax in that over the top of the creek, how wonderful that would be. Looking back now, I wonder who was it supervising these kids? The answer is nobody. My mom was a devout Catholic, and with that came rules one might expect. We were to go to confession on Saturday and to church on Sunday. Well, we were kids, and church was no fun for a kid. So us older kids figured out we should choose to go to church at a different time earlier than Mom. And well, so the story goes. At first, we started walking to church, and of course, as a kid, the fun way to walk to church was to walk along the railroad tracks, which we did. And we oftentimes put pennies on them and came back later to see if they had been smashed. And that railroad track went from a couple of blocks from our house all the way to St. Simon's Church. Funny how that trip down the railroad tracks took just enough time for us to get to St. Simon's, pick up a bulletin, turn around, and walk back up the tracks and get home in time. And as long as we came home with a bulletin from Mass, then it was all good. As the older of us kids started to drive, we found that taking the car to church worked even better. We would drive to church, get a bulletin, and then we would drive to a Payless drugstore a little ways away from us, which just happened to have a donut counter. I don't believe I have ever tasted a donut that tasted as good as that one did back in that day. We went to 9 o'clock Mass because if we did that, the donuts at Payless were still warm and the glaze literally ran through your hands. Then there was catechism classes. We were supposed to go once a week after school, and it took some of us longer than others of us to find a way around that. Many of our school friends were more than happy that Lynn or I was at their house after school on Thursdays until about 5 p.m., when we needed to leave to walk home to get home at the right time frame as if we were leaving catechism. So I think that rebellious nature in both Lynn and I has been there for a long time. As we grew past our childhood years, both Lynn and I were busy and to some extent went in different directions. For Lynn, that meant going off to the big university. So off to UC Santa Barbara Lynn went, followed by her transfer and then graduation from UC Berkeley. Lynn found her career niche at Hewlett-Packard in Cupertino. Lynn just had an amazing way of finding her way to great opportunities, and her work career was no different. At HP's encouragement, she applied for and was accepted into the master's program at University of Massachusetts. HP offered to pay for her tuition as well as pay for 70% of her existing salary for her to go and do the master's program. What amazing opportunity for Lynn. So into her much loved Audi she went and drove across the United States to school and never came back home except for frequent visits. And she did that well. The year Andrew was born, Lynn asked if my daughters Beth, Patty, and I could make a trip out to visit during spring break so that we could spend Easter with them. I thought, why not? At that point in my life, I could certainly have used a change of scenery, so we flew out. I had not been back to visit Lynn and Linda in a couple years, and certainly had not had a chance to meet Lynn and Lynn's closest friends. Lynn announced that we would be having quiche for brunch for Easter, and that we would be doing a chocolate Easter egg tasting. To Tracy's point, who does that? The idea was to determine what would be the best possible Easter eggs. Only Lynn would find such a unique way to blend her utter love for chocolate and Easter in this way. What fun we had walking around the big table in her house and past the pass-through counter where Andrew often sits to eat, tasting chocolate Easter eggs. There must have been 29 or 30 different kinds of chocolate Easter eggs. Some of us didn't have a very good stomach after that. At that Easter morning, I met Lynn and Linda's very close friends. I remember meeting Leslie, who Patty had talked about many times after summer visits. I also remember meeting Maureen and Victoria, who at the time had a toddler and a relatively newborn daughter, Olivia and Eva. I think back to the day now and can't help but think how amazing it is for Andrew to have known them all of his life. In my world as an adult, trying to figure out what to do with a 12-year-old daughter in the summertime while I worked was a dilemma. I was a single parent. I was working about 60 hours a week. I couldn't quite make sense of what to do. So I did what I oftentimes do. I called Lynn and said, what do I do? How do I fix this? And I talked to her about that problem, saying that Patty was too young to really be out on her own for the whole summer unattended, but was pretty much way too old to go to any form of daycare. Lynn immediately came up to the rescue, as she always does, with an amazing solution. She suggested that I fly Patty out to Massachusetts because Lynn said she sort of had the same problem. What to do with Andrew all day. Andrew was just a toddler at the time, and Lynn had to work, and Linda, her busiest time of the year is summertime. So I thought, why not? Patty has given magic with babies, and she would have a blast playing mommy with Andrew. So fly she did, and it worked so well that she did it for the next 2 summers. Leave it to Lynn to find a win-win solution. Patty has the most amazing memories of her summer with Lynn, Linda, and Andrew. Lynn insisted upon making sure that Patty had an adventure each summer. So Patty got to go to New York City, Montreal, Canada, and alternate those years every other year. Patty managed to be a volunteer at preschool. She worked with Linda at 4th of July celebrations in town and went to work with Linda to help organize prizes and the like. Lynn brought Patty with her to play in her golf league, and she taught Patty how to play golf, and also included Patty in her softball games. The summer after Patty got her driver's license, again, back to Amherst with her. She wanted to take a trip to visit her sister who was living in Maine at the time, and of course, Lynn graciously offered up one of her cars and sent her on her way. However, before she left, she told Patty, if you had an emergency that might happen, that I always keep spare cash in the car for emergencies. I just want you to know. Partway to Maine, the transmission in that car died. On the side of the road, left Patty stranded on the freeway. Lynn never said anything to make Patty feel like this was her fault, but instead made sure Patty had a tow truck coming, and then went and found Patty and bailed her out. Over the years of Lynn's life, she has done what she does so well. She gathers friends. Very few people can say that they have had a cohesive group of friends since young childhood. But of course, Lynn had this in a group that she fondly calls the Hens. Stand up, Hens. And they are here with us tonight. We are so lucky to have several of them here. In the past 2 years, I've spent a lot of time here in Belchertown with Lynn, Linda, and Andrew, along with so many of their friends. I have never in my life seen a group of friends who are as 100% there for one another than the friends that surround Lynn. Her friends have provided me with a huge comfort in the past 2 years through Lynn's fight with cancer. They have stepped up time and time again to help her in so many ways, and even to help me make arrangements to fly, get me a ride at the airport, loan me a spare car, and the like. Through Lynn's battle with cancer, Victoria was amazing in the way that she kept updates flowing to many people, including to me. It was through those updates that I found out each time Lynn was being admitted to the hospital. Thank you, Victoria, for all the communications and all the wrangling of arrangements that helped me to surprise Lynn each time. I flew a lot of times, and never once did I tell Lynn or Linda I was coming. Instead, it was my way to just walk in the room in the hospital. And every time the reaction made it all worth all the effort. Several times Lynn would, when I walked into the hospital, Lynn would say, "What, you again? You were just here. Why are you here again?" I explained to Lynn, "Don't you remember one day when I sent you a daily inspiration that said, 'When you are in the dark times, I will be there to hold your hand'?" And she said, "Yes, I remember that." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I meant it." And she continued to wonder why I was there, and I told her that the only way she could make it stop was to stop going in the hospital, which unfortunately she was not able to do. Lynn always managed to find ways to bring humor into those visits, which makes the memories that much more poignant to me now. I will cherish each and every minute that I had with her throughout her fight and for the years to come. Today I am reflecting back on all the years with Lynn, and I feel blessed to have endless memories with Lynn to remind me and to rely on going forward. I am also grateful that my friendship with Linda and Andrew has become very strong through all the visits in the past 2 years. I have also gained a wealth of friends in those who surrounded her life.
Lynn and I shared 28 years, 8 months, 4 days, and 15.25 hours together. We were fortunate to have, and you've just met them, a combination of 8 brothers and sisters, 11 nieces and nephews, a multitude of aunts, uncles, cousins, and for some years, we had our parents in our lives too. We've been blessed to have the support of many loving friends. In our time together, we owned 9 automobiles, lived in 2 houses, had 3 pets, and of course, 1 incredible son. So that's an inventory, but it certainly doesn't tell us the story of who Lynn was. She was complicated. She was a composite of so much good. And there's a lot that's been said about that. But I want to start with the word capable. I think that's what struck me the very first time I met her. You've heard she was a graduate student at the University of Massachusetts, finishing up her computer science degree. And she graduated, and I learned right away just how much she was sought after for her abilities. We used to receive phone calls at home all the time with job offers. Now, these were from places that she hadn't actually applied to. Unheard of. My understanding is she made a great computer science programmer from her friends here at McKesson. She loved the work, she loved her career, and I think we might hear some more about that a little bit later from each of them. But that work wasn't her only possible choice for a career. She could have done anything. Early on, accounting was a consideration. She could have mastered that work easily. For years, our checkbooks were balanced to the 100th decimal point. In 2014, we took an amazing family vacation to 5 European cities in 5 different countries, each with different languages and different currencies. 0 problems. Financially speaking, Lynn was a whiz. Okay, then there's legal work. Lynn told me just out of high school she thought maybe she might enjoy becoming an attorney. She considered it. And I want to challenge anyone here to tell me that they had a difference of opinion with Lynn and that they won the argument. Lynn's friends often informally turned to her to get a read on difficult situations. She was trusted, confident, and articulate. She thought through her logic and clearly explained it in a non-judgmental way. She made you happy. You asked for her advice. So who continues to be Lynn? What about the rest of the world? She had the envious ability to be in the moment with whomever she was talking to and still managed to have awareness of schedules, deadlines, commitments. She took time to listen. And when she was listening, she was figuring out answers. She was a logistical genius. When she did her daily bike rides, she'd create a plan for the week for getting clothing, food, and her bike in the place it needed to be, and her car in the other place it needed to be each of those days. And maybe this sounds simple, but trust me, it is not simple. It's not as easy as it sounds. Try it sometime. She helped others without expecting something in return. Altruistic, it's called. She cared about others. And I have these 2 stories I want to share with you. So here it was. It was the middle of the night on a summer evening. It's about 10 years ago. We had our windows open, and we were wakened by loud clanging noises and truck sounds and voices outside. And this wasn't typical for our quiet country road. So we went out on the street, and we saw fire trucks and firefighters working to put out a fire just a couple blocks away. Well, we learned that the family had gotten out, and the house was saved, but it was gutted. So the next morning, Lynn put $400 in an envelope, wrote a note saying, "Here's something to buy food with if the insurance doesn't come in right away." She put the envelope in the mailbox. She never met the family and didn't know their name. That's who Lynn was. Here's another one. Winter before last, sometime in mid-January, there were lost dog signs all over the valley. If you live around here, I'm sure you saw these dog signs. The signs had a photo of a big, yellow, fluffy dog and the owner's phone number, asking for information, any kind of information leading to its discovery. So Lynn got home pretty late one night, and she said that she thought she had seen the dog and was going to call the owner. So it was 10 p.m. in the middle of winter. Did I mention it was January? And she had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and she's headed out in the middle of the night with someone she'd never met, looking for a lost dog. She came back a few hours later, tromping around in the snow and darkness, and they didn't find the dog. And she thought maybe later it was, a coyote, but here's what happened. The owner was uplifted to get some kind of a lead. The owner felt really indebted to Lynn. She was compassionate way beyond her inner circle of family and friends. The Lynn Smith that I knew as a wife and mother. She had tremendous mothering instincts and somehow knew what to say at exactly the right moment. She took her responsibility as a mother seriously, even before Andrew was born, and certainly after. You've heard some mention already of her leadership qualities. She became active in Andrew's school, served as a memorable leader, president of the PTO, increased participation, served on the after-school board, planned events, pulled the community together in every way that she was able to. She guided Andrew in a way that shaped him into the sensitive, thinking, caring person he is today. And I believe much of what she taught Andrew was through her example. And he's his own person, but there is so much of Lynn there too. She had a deep and abiding love for Andrew and me, and she showed it in all kinds of individual Lynn ways. In addition to giving us gifts on our birthdays, she gave us gifts on her birthday. Usually, Andrew and I would find a mountain of stacked and individually wrapped gifts with real cloth ribbon and unique and thoughtful items tucked inside. These would be sitting on the kitchen table or our bed waiting for us on her birthday morning. She was playful. I'd get hiccups sometimes, and she convinced me I should open my mouth as wide as I could, like this, and try to make the loudest possible burps imaginable. I wish I could do it right now. I don't. This was supposed to get rid of the hiccups. Okay. But it never worked. But she was very convincing, found this to be hilarious, and enjoyed joking with a gullible me. And we did this every time I got the hiccups. Can't wait to have the hiccups again. She was tough and courageous if she needed to be on the outside, and soft and sentimental on the inside. She could be moved to tears at movies, and whenever someone said something nice to her, she cried. She cried when she was happy. I will remember her every time I hear a Cheryl Wheeler song or use the kitchen knives, the ones she sharpened with a whetstone. Who does that? I will remember her when I gaze at a bearded iris, her favorite flower. Taste malted vanilla Harold's ice cream, admire Christine Lavich's glorious landscapes, or see a dropped leaf on the floor knowing in her hands an entire plant could follow. I will remember Lynn. And every time I see a biker riding down our road, heading up our mountain, or flying by as fast as the wind, I will feel Lynn's presence and remember how lucky I was to have her in my life for 28 years, 8 months, 4 days, and 15 and a quarter hours. I love you, Lynn. Thank you.
Good evening. We're the hens. Only 3 of us. There's auxiliary hens, and then there's the core. And Lynn, myself, Leanne, and Renee and Barbara were the core hens. Anyway, I'll go first because I'm the new friend. I did not meet Lynn until high school. And somebody asked me yesterday, well, when did you meet Lynn? I don't remember my life without Lynn since high school. We were in Girl Scouts, and then we just hung out together. And then, really, it's been interesting, life's journey. Our lives have been intertwined ever since. We went to Santa Barbara together, UC Santa Barbara, and then I followed her to Berkeley, and we lived together there. And then she was my roommate, my last roommate I had before my husband, before I got married. And then, as you know, Lynn moved to Massachusetts, and then we moved out to Maryland. So Lynn and Linda and Andrew are really our family, and nobody's here from our real families, but they're closer to us and our children than, biological families. And I was really fortunate. I got to come up several times while Lynn was in the hospital, and I got to be there the day before she left us. And those of you who knew her, you can relate to this. Her last words she said to me were, I was trying to hold it together, and I couldn't at the last goodbye. And she said, "Go, girl, go." And then you know how she did that thing with her hand? Yeah, right. And I've thought about that since. And, who does that? That's a tagline for Lynn, right? But go, girl, go. Who rides their bike across country at 18? Who does those kind of things, right? Lynn was such a unique person. She had that intellect, but she had a heart, right? And I did go to her many times and talk to her. And so if I wanted brutally honest critiques, I got it from Lynn. But here's the deal. If I got praise from her, it was the real deal. It wasn't just a bunch of BS. It was the real deal if you got that praise from Lynn. So I want us to think about that go, girl, go, right? That was our tagline for Lynn. But let's think of that. And the next time you're thinking of something and it's, life's not quite going right, just let's think of Lynn and think of her saying to you, go, girl, go. And I want to say to you, wherever you are, Lynn, in this cosmos, I love you so much. And go, girl, go.
I don't know how you follow that, but I'm Renee, and I have known Lynn longer than anybody here except her own family. We were in first grade together, and throughout high school we were roommates in college, and she was one of the maids of honor at my wedding. And what else?
Everything.
So Linda asked us to explain the hens, and it was the four of us, and when we were shortly after we graduated from college, we all lived in the same area, and we would get together with our husbands, boyfriends, and do dinners or game night. But some nights we would just get together with the girls, and we were having a hen party, and so we became the hens forever after. And
except for Andrew. When he was little, he called us the chicken people. Where'd he go? There he is.
And the only other thing I want to say is, people have said, she was a community leader. She was a great computer scientist. I don't know about those things. She was just my friend.
Okay, I have to lighten this up, or I'm not going to be able to talk. There's two stories. The story about Lynn not going to school because she wouldn't clean her room. The ending of that story that I remember is Lynn volunteered to go out and get the mail that day. And her mom said, okay, you got to get the mail. Well, Lynn went to the mailbox and then started running to school. And then her mom found her at school, and I don't know what happened after that, but that's the end of that story. So I'm Barbara. I'm the other crazy who does that. I'm the one who rode across the country with Lynn. And a lot of people have asked, how in the world did your mother let you do that? So I'm going to see if I can tell this story coherently. As I recall, both of our fathers said, ask your mother. We cooked this story up. We cooked this crazy idea up when we were 16 on a little bike ride on the American River in Sacramento. And I think our mothers hoped we would ignore this and forget about it and not go. But it's, we started getting jobs and earning money and putting our bikes together. And I think we had a couple months before we graduated from high school, and we didn't have permission from our mothers yet. So Lynn calls me up and says, tell your mom my mom said it's okay to go. So I do, and my mom's like, really? Lynn's mother said that? And I said, that's what Lynn said. And my mom's like, okay, if Lynn's mom says yes, then you can go. So I assume Lynn went to her mom and said the same thing. So that morning in Lynn's front yard, when we're saying goodbye to everybody to bike 3,500 miles away to Virginia, we pedal off. We say goodbye to everybody and pedal off around the corner and out of sight. My mother turns to Lynn's mother and says, did you really say that? And she said, I never said they could go. And my mom says the same thing. And anyway, we were gone. So that's how Anyway, that's that story. And I will end there.
Hi. As Linda kindly introduced me, I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, Mary. And I have a story that I think will make you laugh. You'll probably remember about it more than me. But Linda and Lynn and Andrew would come and visit us. We live in the family house that Lynn grew up in, and they'd come and visit us every summer, which was really a wonderful joy. And it was one summer that Linda didn't come for some reason. It was just Lynn and Andrew. And so I got the pleasure of hanging out with them for the day. And they went to this place in Pescadero. Maybe you guys will remember the name of it. It's this really weird place that has all these, I know you know where I'm going with this. The Bean Place. Thank you. So Andrew was young. I don't know, you were maybe 10 or you were young, you were little. And so we went in there, and Lynn was, in her element with these beans. There are all these beans that you can cook in a pot. And they're these weird beans that you can't get in the grocery store. So they're like rows and rows of all these bins of beans, and Lynn's just so happy. And so Andrew and I are like, okay, let's go check out the place while she's going through her beans. And so we go in the back, we're walking around, there's all these like weird birds and all these cages and like this junk all over the place. I mean, it was really kind of creepy. It's like, Andrew, this isn't a safe place for you back here. I'm like, we're going back to the beans. And so, so anyway, we gave her some time to pick out her beans, and then we come back to the front, and I thought maybe she'd have like a couple little bags of beans. She had like 5 giant bags of beans, like gallon-sized bags of beans. I said, Lynn, how are you going to get these beans back to Massachusetts? She goes, Mary, just no problem. She goes, my suitcase, the 70-pound weight limit. She's like, I left room in my suitcase just for these beans. I got plenty of room for them. I'm like, okay. So anyway, we left. And so anyway, the trip came and went, and it was the day that Andrew and Lynn were flying home. And so they left early in the morning, and then our phone rang about 8 o'clock at night. And I picked up the phone, and Lynn's like, it's Lynn. She's like, we just got to Hartford. She's like, Andrew wants to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And so you were so tired, I know. So you get on the phone, you're like, Lynn's suitcase was over the weight limit. She's like, we had to move several of the beans into my suitcase. I was laughing so hard. I couldn't believe it. It was like, I just love that story. And every time I see beans in the grocery store, I think of Lynn. It's like, it just brought, anyway, it just made me smile. It's one of my favorite stories about her. But I just want to say a couple other quick things is that, and other people have said the same thing, is that the thing about Lynn that was the most special to me was her way of always making me feel important and always making me feel like she cared. Not making me feel, I know she did. She cared about me. It didn't matter what was going on. I could go to her for anything, and she genuinely cared, and she always helped me sort through problems. I can't tell you how many like novels I emailed to her saying, what do I do about this? Help me. And she was just always there for me. Like, I'm not sure who I'm going to go to now. But that was just something that was really, really meant a lot to me. And the last thing I wanted to say was my dad died when I was 18, and I remember his brother telling me when he died, he said, Mary, when your dad died, he said, he goes, the world is just not as good of a place. He goes, like something is wrong with the world without your dad. And that's how I feel. I feel like the world is a little bit less bright and a lot less good of a place without her. And I will always feel that way. I will miss her forever. And I'm really, really grateful that I got the privilege of being her sister-in-law for as many years as I did. So anyway, thank you.
My name's Howard. I'm actually Lynn's youngest sibling. And a couple of themes I've heard from different people I want to reinforce with a story. One of the themes is dependability. Lynn was extremely dependable. And I've also heard others iterate a trait of I'll call it analytic processing capability. So this story takes me back. It's not the very first memory I remember. When you ask yourself what you remember, what's the first thing you remember? It's very hard. But this story is definitely one of the first things that I remember. I believe I would have been probably about 4 years old, which means Lynn would have probably been about 10 years old. And for whatever reason, this was the first time, I believe the first time, I don't remember for certain because I was only 4, but I believe that this was the first time that Lynn was charged with babysitting my brother Gordon and myself. So she was the master of the household, if you will. I believe must have been summertime because it was the middle of the day and we weren't in school that day. It was either weekend or summer, I don't know. And seemed fine to me. I was told Lynn's in charge, no problem. Everything seemed quite normal, and it was time to take a nap. Would have been around noon, sometime like that. So I was instructed to go into bed, take a nap, and that was not unusual. You do this stuff. So I'm laying in bed, of course, not sleeping, and there was this situation. There's so many of us that I shared a room with two sisters. I don't remember which were teenagers, but one or both of them were teenagers. Yeah, and so in those days, teenagers had matches in their jewelry cabinet. And of course, I was 4 years old. I had a little model fire truck. So instead of sleeping, I had the fire truck in bed with me. And so this is I don't remember exactly how this played out. But this part I don't remember. But I probably would have thought, well, this fire truck's pretty lonesome without a fire, and there are matches in that jewelry. So I went and got the matches. And I do remember the bed being on fire. And I remember being very panicked that the bed was on fire. Of course, I'm supposed to be sleeping. Well, I'm not sleeping. The bed's on fire. And so I screamed. What's a 4-year-old going to do in that situation? Scream, scream, scream. And Lynn hears the screaming, knows that it's not normal. What does a 10-year-old do in that situation? I don't know, but what does Lynn do in that situation? She managed, at 10 years old, okay, fire, run to the kitchen sink, get the mom's cup that she drinks water out of, and run to the bedroom, and then tell Gordon, who might know how to use the phone or not. Of course, I'm screaming. I'm useless. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, scared to death. And tells, as she's running back and forth, putting a cup of water on the fire, tell Gordon, call the fire department. And of course, Gordon, sorry, you're getting a bit mad at me, but Gordon didn't know how to call the fire department. And so as she went by the room where the telephone was, he would give him step-by-step instructions on how to get the fire department. Because there wasn't 911 those days. You have to dial. You don't push to dial. And then and then there was a whole thing about the address, and that was a struggle too. Lynn got the fire out. The firemen came. I remember being scared to death because I knew I was in trouble. And the funniest thing is the firemen left, and all the bedding was out on the front lawn just like this, and these big holes this big around, and all the bedding with sears. And my mother comes walking up with her grocery bags, and I'm thinking I'm in trouble, but she just went and talked to Lynn, and I don't remember there being any fallout from, because Lynn just handled it. It doesn't matter what you throw at her; she just deals with it. It's wonderful. Anyway, that's the story I wanted to share.
My name is Leslie, and I've known Lynn and Linda for 30 years, and Andrew since the moment of his birth. And I had a lot prepared, but I will simply tell two very quick stories. A memory of Lynn was one time when Andrew was probably about 3 or 4. If you've been to the house, you know that you can kind of make a circuit through Lynn and Linda's bedroom, out into the untiled area, through the living room, through the kitchen area, and then back. And Andrew decided that he was going to do laps. So he started doing laps, and we're talking 3 and 4 years old. And after a while, I began to become worried because this child kept running and running and running. And Lynn would stand there, and Andrew would come by, and she'd go like this. And he'd say, "How many?" And she'd say, 30. "How many now?" 57. "How many now?" 99. She was tolerant like that. And one other thing that Mary reminded me of, the thing that Lynn and Linda and Andrew have given me more than anything else is a sense of family. And I've been able to celebrate birthdays and Christmases and Easters and Thanksgivings with them for many, many, many years. And Lynn, of course, always made the cakes. And one day, we were up celebrating somebody's birthday. I don't remember who it was. Unfortunately, Marianne, Antonellis, Chris, Nevin, and Rachel are not here today. They're in Idaho, but we would frequently have birthdays and Thanksgivings with them. And Lynn had made a cake, and it was a very special cake. And as it turns out, it was a black walnut cake. And so when it came time to have cake for the birthday, the kids came running in, all excited to have cake. Andrew doesn't like nuts. So as Andrew learned the bad news that the cake had black walnuts in it, the phone rang in Marianne's kitchen. And Andrew picked up the phone and he said, "You've called at the worst time in the history of the world," and hung up the phone. Marianne and Lynn, now quite sage as parents, looked at each other and went, and the other person who had called, also a parent, called back later.
First, I want to say it was an honor to know and love Lynn. I miss her every day. Although Lynn did not wear her emotions on her sleeves, she was very compassionate, loyal, and witty, and no matter what your conversation was with her, you always felt like you had her full attention, and she always gave you the best answer and would methodically think about it before she spoke. This was to be admired. She helped me through one of the most challenging times of my past 20 years, and for this I will always be thankful. We shared the love of watching sports together, football, basketball, baseball. We also very much enjoyed doing jigsaw puzzles and crossword puzzles. We shared the same abilities to want to take things apart and fix them ourselves, change our oil on our cars, and just about any challenge that came up, she was ready to tackle it. And boy, has she proved that the last 2 years. She would often call me on the phone and ask me about a toilet problem or a faucet leak or just about anything. And we would methodically think it over and try to tackle it together. She never wanted to be the center of attention. I could never express all of my feelings for Lynn in this venue, but know that my shortage of words about her tonight is an indication only that there is not enough time. And I know that everyone else will have much to say about a woman who never wanted to be the center of attention. But when you were a friend of hers, she made you feel very special and loved in the only ways Lynn could. Until we meet again, my friend.
I was Lynn's brother-in-law, and Lynn fit in with our family seamlessly. Everybody loved her. Lynn was a rock. The only differences we ever had is, for some reason, she was a Patriot fan, and we're Colt fans.
So my name is Sheri, and I am related to Lynn through her brother, her oldest brother, Norm, and it's a blessing to be part of the family, and certainly to be a sister-in-law of Lynn. So I have a story that I want to say that I have heard in many different ways of everybody who's actually spoke today, and that is how engaged Lynn was in the moment. So I have to tell you, I was on my way to San Francisco, driving into the city. So very courageous of me to drive into the city, no BART or anything else, and I'm on the road, and it happened to be the day that Lynn had her first chemotherapy appointment. And so I wanted to call her along the way, and actually my husband was with me, and thankfully he was doing the driving, I was talking. This was a good thing. So my husband is driving. We're headed toward the Golden Gate Bridge, like it's coming up. And I wanted to check in with Lynn and see how she was doing. And I really wanted to talk to her and just reassure her that, I'm so sorry, but your hair is going to fall out. And it's not the hair that you really wanted to fall out, but it's the other hair that's going to fall out. So, And then, you know, you'll feel good with those steroids and, you know, make sure you take care of yourself. So my thought as I'm coming into the city of San Francisco is to talk about Lynn. And Lynn wanted to know, what are you doing in San Francisco? Like, where are you headed? Oh, Lynn, I'm headed to a CIO conference. It's a summit. They do this quarterly. We're going to talk about big data. We're going to talk about how to secure data in motion and data at rest. We're going to learn about tools. We're going to learn about how to secure private data and keep it private. Do you know that we talked for 15 minutes all the way across the Golden Gate Bridge and into the city because Lynn wanted to know where I was going, and we talked about big data the whole way. So this was Lynn. So Lynn wasn't interested in Lynn. She didn't want to focus on herself. Her precious time wanted to be spent with, like, what are you doing? And we had a fantastic conversation because this is right up her alley. This is exactly what she wanted to talk about, and it was just enthusiastic all the way. So it was like, oh, whatever, the hair will fall out. Let me find out what you're doing at that summit. So again, what I remember about Lynn, and that's just kind of a little technical story, but she was always engaged, always interested in what other people were doing, always wanted to be part of everyone else's life. And that was absolutely precious and something I will cherish forever and certainly miss. Thank you.